Hi, hello, my name's Ollie Bliss and this is my channel Bookdraw. For those who don't know, I enjoy looking at queer fiction and occasionally I create images out of books. So today I am doing a bit of a haul video, starting with a birthday book from my partner Craig, which is Something Like Summer by J. Bell. So I had no idea about the existence of this book, but when I read the back I was just like, Craig knows what I like and what I'm into, and he did a really good job. So this is a love story spanning across 10 years, and it focuses on the relationship between Ben and Tim. So I don't know masses about this because I haven't heard anybody else review this one in terms of from other channels that I've just been looking on. I'm really interested to just give this one a go and find out a bit more about J. Bell because I know nothing about the writer either. But it basically kickstarts from a chance meeting where the pair of them bump into each other, probably not so accidentally according to the back cover, and they lead on to a relationship which lasts across the period where they are lovers, they are friends, and even at times enemies. So I'm sold. I'm ready for it. The next group which I want to talk about was actually hauled during Mother's Day. So we went down with my younger sister and my mum. Hello, Mum, if you're watching this. And we just spent the day in Bath and enjoyed 2 hours of indulgence in the spa treatments that they have there. It's across 4 different floors. It's absolutely crazy. You go down into the basement where it's got one of those rivers which you can go float around. You then go onto the second floor, and on the second floor you've got like a steam room where it's a conservatory with the smell of rose, and in another room you've got these like tiled beds and a trippy video which you can play and just like space out to it while the tiles are actually like heated. And in another room they've got these infrared panels which are like a direct sauna source. So it was really fun just to go across these different floors, and on the top it's actually got this outdoor pool which is naturally heated and it's looking out across all of Bath, and it was stunning. You can't actually take video footage because lots of people are half naked and might not want to be recorded while you're taking pictures and selfies, which I completely understand, but we had lunch and just hung out and chilled out for ages. It was just divine. And then we went and perused the shops, and I went to 3 different shops where I was able to pick up some books. So these are the ones which I ended up picking up whilst I was walking around Bath. Starting with, we went into the indoor markets in Bath, and they've got a lot of second-hand books, and I picked up a couple of titles. The first being Middlesex, which is by Geoffrey Eugenides. So a lot of people will know this from Virgin Suicides, and this is like a pretty epic-sized chunkster, but this is actually about a character who has both male and female parts. This is a story which spans across 3 generations, and it's focusing on a lead character who starts off life as a baby girl, but then transitions into a teenage boy. I'm just really curious about this one. This is one which has kind of been on my radar for a while, and I feel like it will probably be a pretty epic read. I have only read one intersex novel, I think, which was Annabelle, and I do have None of the Above, which I still have not got around to reading, so I really do need to pick up on my intersex to get a bit of eye representation going on. So I'm looking forward to this one. I also picked up Fierce, which was totally a cover buy. I picked it up thinking, oh, Fierce. But then when I actually read the back of it, it is certainly not that type of character at all. This is a story which is actually told over a process of 3 hours, where a mother and her son are visiting a zoo, and something happens, and she basically has to muster up all her courage to look after the welfare of her son. So I was just kind of like, even though it wasn't what I was expecting it to be, ended up buying it just because when I read the back I was sold. Next we went on into Waterstones, and while I was in there I ended up actually purchasing 2 books because both of them stood out for me for different reasons. The first one, which is Internment, which is by Samira Ahmed, and I picked this up because I had attended the London Book Fair, which is more of a publishing industry fair. It's huge. I'll add some footage, but I was doing that with work, and I ended up listening to one of these panel discussions, which was talking about debut authors, and the person who was speaking there was from Little Brown, which is the publisher for this particular book, and she was amazing. She was so interesting to listen to. And she had a completely different perspective from the other panelists.
So one of the things that I can't do actually is read the first chapter and kind of decide from there. So it makes it really much slower than a lot of other editors. And so I'm often not first off the gate, because my thing is, having read for film and television, I want to know the detail of, can this author take that trajectory of what they've promised in that synopsis, and can they take that throughout the whole book? And then what I've discovered the thing that I was most afraid of becoming a publisher, having done all of these different roles, was editing. But what I've discovered is that actually I can see the arc, and what I really love is editing. And I really like going back to that author and trying to work out if they're the right author for me to work with in order to get that story to where I think that they want it to go.
This is actually like an American author, and there is an American version of Little Brown, and I'm not entirely sure if this is a selection from the US company or the UK company, but I was like, oh, Little Brown. I ended up picking up this particular book because I read the back of the cover and just thought, yeah, this sounds like it would be really interesting, particularly in the current climate. So there has been a census, and it's a month into the declaration from the president saying Muslims are now a threat to America. So I thought, okay, this could be pretty relevant, quite scarily, and we'll just see what happens within the book. And I partly got this because I thought the cover was just really cool. You've got this woman with hair covering part of her face. She's got a cap which says resist, and you've got the star and crescent from the Islamic faith, and it's got red barbed wire going across the front. So I was just drawn in by it, and I just thought, yeah, this could be quite an interesting story, really. The next one, which I also got from Waterstones, was Jan Morris's Battleship Yamato. So I actually ended up watching a introduction to this book, which was presented by Jan Morris. I will add a snippet so you can understand what I'm talking about.
The idea of empire was already fading when these great ships were built. They were empty symbols of glory. Nevertheless, they were glorious in a way. They represent in another sphere what I'm trying to represent in this book, really. That the idea of glory itself was a bit of a fraud in the end. I came across the story of the book in a memoir written by one of the young Japanese sailors who was on board the ship. Marvelous things like courage and loyalty were debased by the fact that they were concerned with vile objectives very often. The whole thing seemed to me to be a very squalid mix-up of beauty and hatefulness.
So what I really liked about her introduction to this was the fact that she was talking about how the battleship is an allegory for war, essentially, and in terms of how fruitless that really is for the people who actually serve directly for it. This is a beautiful hardcover publication, and it's got a mixture of images. I don't know how well you can see this. From different points of history, alongside her insights and descriptions of war. I just wanted to try this one out because I really enjoyed I have just recently read In the Mind's Eye by the same author, and I just wanted to see what she did with this this topic, and because she comes from a perspective of kindness, but also a real interest in machinery and the constructs of war, I thought her lens would be quite insightful and quite unique. So I'm just curious to see what she's actually done with all this material and the kind of historic narrative and how it's set in terms of time and place. Then we went on to Topping and Company, which I've never been to before, and it's just a really cool bookshop. For me, it's like what a bookshop should be, where it's got the ladders going up to all the cases. And there were just a lot of cool, quirky individual people there, where you just felt like it's got massive indie book vibes going on. There's lots of independent displays. I ended up coming across this staircase where it had all across this one side all these Penguin published books about great ideas. And they're all really slim little books, and there's about 80 of them, I think, or more. And I just picked up these 3 different titles because of the subject matter that they were talking about. The first one which I picked up is On Solitude by Michel Montaigne, and this has got just lots of different concepts about what solitude actually looks like, and it goes through different little essays about the construct of solitude, covering things like sleep and consciousness, anger and virtue. So I'm interested in terms of like the time in which this was set, but also because of an arty project which I'm involved in at the moment, which is looking at isolation and loneliness, and that's countered with solitude. So I feel like doing some background reading will be useful for that. Likewise, I chose David Hume on suicide. I know, great topic, but without being too facetious about it, again, just in terms of the relationship to this arty project which I'm involved in, I just wanted to see some historic context in terms of what people thought about the construct of suicide. And on the front cover it says, "I believe that no man ever threw away life while it was worth keeping." So I'm curious to know what the kind of narratives were of this particular time and seeing how that relates to where we are now. Finally, of these 3, I picked up Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own. Now, I really like Virginia Woolf as a writer, and I wasn't aware of this particular publication at all. Particularly interested in this in terms of her as a creative writer. I think it would be interesting to gain some insight into what she was trying to achieve, the working environment that she was experiencing and what she was up to. Again, this also complements the project which I'm exploring at the moment. So the 3 of them just felt like they were useful material to give me a framing around what I'm currently exploring. And finally, I picked this one up just because of what I read on the back, and I felt rewarded afterwards because when I actually purchased it, the bookkeeper actually complimented me on this choice, saying that it was a really good book, and that's always really encouraging because by that point I'd already exchanged the money, so you know that it's kind of coming from a sincere place where they're like, that's a good choice. But I'll read you the back of the book because it's what sold it to me, basically, and because I was kind of interested in the cover design, but it was mainly predominantly what I had read on the back. So it says, "In the heart of Mexico City, a young mother begins a novel about her days in New York and her obsession with an obscure poet from the Harlem Renaissance. As she writes, the decades between the author and her character blurs, and she begins to be haunted by the solitary man living in the edges of Harlem's drinking circles, troubled by his own spectral visions of a young woman travelling the New York subway." Sorry, fluffed that last little bit, but from that I just thought, that sounds cool, like a meeting of minds, basically. And because it's such a slight little read, I figured I can do that one. Anyway, this is enough from me. If there are any of these books that you're interested in, let me know in the comments down below, particularly if you've read any of these yourself. I always love hearing your recommendations. I will see you again real soon. Okay, take care. Bye.